How many books did I read in July? Stick around and find out. Hi friends, welcome back to Pages and Chaos, and this is all of the books that I read or attempted to read in the month of July. So in July, I participated in 2 read-a-thons. So every single book that I read counted towards the Hunger Games read-a-thon. And then I also participated in Ketchup-a-thon, which was a read-a-thon to catch up with your book of the month TBR, but you could really use any TBR that you had. So those were very specific, but there were 2 extra books that were added on that also counted for the Hunger Games. So we'll start with those and then go into my Ketchup-a-thon books and see how many I read and what my ratings were. So before we get into that, let's start off with a little bit of stats from the Hunger Games read-a-thon, because we got points for pages read, for prompts, and things like that. We also had the opportunity to get points for something called mutt fights and arena events and sponsorship. It was just so much fun, and I absolutely loved this read-a-thon. Unfortunately, they did announce that this was going to be the last year of this read-a-thon, and I understand it is a lot of work, and the game makers of this read-a-thon put in so much effort, and I can see how time-consuming it is. I'm a little bit sad, but I give them so much credit. So the stats. I read in the month of July for this read-a-thon 2,305 pages. My points from my prompts were 775 points. My points from my arena events were 475. I won 375 points from sponsorships. Unfortunately, I only participated in 1 mutt fight, and I wagered and lost 100 points. So my total points that contributed to District 3, because that's the district that I was part of this year, was 3,830. Not bad. We also came in, I believe, 4th place for District 3, which was actually much higher than the district that I was in last year. I think I was in District 7 last year. I believe that's where I was in last year. And we came in like 10th. But again, it's all in good fun. So those are my stats from the Hunger Games read-a-thon. Now let's get to the books. First up is Fatal Fried Rice. This is the 7th book in the Noodle Shop Mysteries and one of the unofficial buddy reads in the Comfy Cozy Book Club. And I gave this 3.5 stars. Which again, I enjoyed it. I actually like this one a little bit better than others in the series because it takes place outside of the town, which I found pretty interesting, because it just seems that everything else keeps happening inside their small little community. So I really like that this took place outside. But Lana in this book decides to take a cooking class because she is the manager of her family-owned Chinese shop or Chinese restaurant, and she doesn't know how to cook any of the meals. So I did like that, but unfortunately it turns out that her instructor is the newest victim, and of course she is under suspicion because she was one of the last people to see her. So that is not only going to be her trying to prove her innocence, but also trying to find out who the real killer is. As always. The next book that I read was the Booklist Thursday buddy read with Lindsay and Sarah, and that is The Beach Trap. And I gave this 4 stars. I really enjoyed this. I believe this is categorized as a romance, but I really enjoyed the fact that the romances in this book, because there are 2 main characters, weren't the main focus, because they were really focused on these 2 sisters. So Blake and Kat, when they were younger, become friends at summer camp, and it is found out that Kat's father actually had an affair, and Blake is really her half-sister. And many, many years later, when they are both adults and their father passed, he leaves Kat and Blake his beach house. And they are responsible for either coexisting or figuring out if they need to sell this beach house and go their separate ways. And I absolutely loved watching these 2 sisters get to know each other, find out more about their stories, the anger that the 2 of them might hold towards their father or towards them, the resentment. It was just really fun to watch them grow, and it was well done. And then Misty just crawled in my lap. Anyway, but the 2 romances that happen in the book, I really also like seeing those grow. I did wish that there was a little bit more of Henry's story in there, but I wasn't totally upset with the fact that these romances weren't the main focus of the book. Next up was A Torch in the Night. I gave this 5 stars. This was the second book in the Ember in the Ashes series, and this was again a buddy read with Krista and with Sarah. I absolutely loved this. I love this series. I can't wait to pick up the third book in the series. So this is a continuation from the first book with Laia and Elias, but I do love the fact that we get a third point of view, and that is from Helene, which is Elias's friend from the first book, and her viewpoint, I think, added so much more to this book because we get to see not only Elias's thoughts and Lila's thoughts, but the fact that Helene is also struggling with the situation that's happening in this book. I don't really want to give too much away because then it would be spoilers for the first book, but I just loved this book. It is a fantasy. It is, I believe, a romantasy, I would say. I don't know if I would categorize it as a romantasy. I would say a fantasy that has a romance in it because the main focus, I don't think, is the romance, and that's what I absolutely loved. I would love to see more books like this where it's more of a subplot, but I just loved everything, all the layers of these characters that are coming out, who all of these different supernatural people are, or supernatural entities that are coming out, the enemies, the villains. We get a new villain in this story. Oh my god, like you hate them so much. The Commandant, we find out in the first book how horrible she is, and she continues with that horrible streak as the villain in this book as well. I mean, it's just, if you have not read this series, I know it is an older series, then you need to pick up this series. I gave this 5 stars. And now for all of the books that I read for Ketchup-a-thon. And again, all these books did also count for the Hunger Games, but these were specifically my Ketchup-a-thon books. So first up was Firekeeper's Daughter, and not only was this part of Ketchup-a-thon, but this was also my recommendation by Amy for the month of July, and I absolutely loved this. I gave this 5 stars. Other people I saw in the reviews didn't exactly give it 5 stars, and yes, I did have a couple of like situations that I was like, it seemed a little drawn out, but you know what? It didn't take away from the core meaning of this story, and I absolutely loved this. So this was about Donis, who is part Ojibwe, and she is like kind of stuck between her life as an Ojibwe because her father was Ojibwe. She's not really accepted on the reservations, but she also really doesn't feel like she fits in with her mom's family and that side of her. And it turns out that there are a string of deaths related to this new drug on the reservation. And because Donis is so well versed in chemistry and the traditional plants of the Ojibwe tribe, she is recruited by the FBI to help them figure this out. And through this, she meets Jamie, who is her brother's new teammate, and we find out so much more about him. I absolutely love this. I also loved there was so much in here that we find out about Donis coming to terms with who she is, figuring out who she is. I loved reading about her explanations of things in the Ojibwe tribe. Like, she explains one of these ceremonies that they do for women. Well, not really for women. It's really against the men who have hurt these women in a very specific way, and it like broke my heart. There's so many scenes in here that were heartbreaking. The descriptions of how she has to come to terms, and other people that have worked with the government and the FBI in the past have to come to terms with the fact that they are helping out an institution that for so many, many years, and even still, have persecuted them, have abused them. Like, you know, they talk about the Trail of Tears, they talk about the Carlisle schools, and this was just so heartbreaking, but in the most eye-opening ways. And I also love the decision that Donis made in the end for herself, for her life. I think it wrapped up so perfectly. And apparently there is a second book, so I'm pretty sure I'm going to try to pick that up as well. Next up is Heartless Hunters, and I love this one as well. This was 4 stars for me, 4 to 4.5 stars. The way this ended made me gasp. which was something that I don't do often, and I can't wait to pick up the second book. I believe this is a duology, and I can't wait to pick up the second book. But first of all, look at that cover. I absolutely love that cover. But this is about a revolution where witches wind up getting purged from the city, and Rune, who is secretly a witch, but also what we call the Crimson Moth, she is secretly trying to help the remaining witches or any witches in hiding escape or stay in hiding. And then she comes across a witch hunter, Gabriel, who doesn't exactly know that she is the Crimson Moth, but kind of suspects, and their whole banter and everything that they go through in this book, I just absolutely loved it. I don't know. I just loved everything about this book. I can't wait to pick up the second book. Next up was Weyward, and I also gave this one 4 stars. And this follows 3 women in 3 different timelines. And all of these women have experienced some kind of abuse or trauma. I was so heartbroken by these stories. I couldn't stop myself from reading through. And yeah, I have no words for this book. Yes, it is tough to read. There are a lot of trigger warnings. There is a lot of abuse against these women, all different types of abuse. But I think it is worth the read. So this is 2009, Kate, who inherits Weyward Cottage from her aunt when her aunt passes, and she winds up uncovering her aunt's story and things like that, but she's also on the run from her abusive husband. In 1619, we have Althea, I think, I forget how to say her name, but she is on trial for being a witch. And then in 1942, we have Violet, who is basically trapped by society. It turns out that she is trying to escape a situation that she gets put in. She finds a locket in her room. Like, her father is not a very good person. It's so sad to see all of these women experience these things, but I loved the way that it wrapped up and tied all 3 of these storylines together at the end. Next up was First Time Caller. This was a last minute read that I just got in like the last couple of days of the month of July. So this is described as a modern day Sleepless in Seattle. I gave this 4 stars. I enjoyed this one. I feel like there were a couple of things that they could have improved on. I'm not sure if this is B.K. Borison's first book. I'll have to look into that. But this is about Aiden, who is the host of this romance radio show, but like he's lost his spark and he really doesn't believe in love himself. And one day, Lucy's daughter winds up calling in saying that, you know, her mom is very sad. She hasn't been on a date and she just wants to help her mom find love. And then it turns into this string of trying to find Lucy the perfect match. And you know, he sets up dates for her. It becomes this whole radio dating show. But of course, behind the scenes, the 2 of them could possibly have their own tension and their own romance that could be budding. But, you know, of course, things happen. We have Aiden, who is just a grump. I think you know, typical grumpy sunshine, and I loved it. But there were a couple of things that kind of seemed a little forced or a little too quick to happen, but I think it was still a fun read. I still gave it 4 stars, and I really enjoyed it. Now, there were 2 books that I did try. I wound up DNFing them. So let's talk about them. The Anomaly. I had so many high hopes for this, and it just didn't grab me. I really only got about a little less than 100 pages in. I just couldn't do it. It wasn't grasping me. It was boring me. Like, it took too long to get to the start of the story, I guess. So this is kind of described as Indiana Jones meets X-Files. Nolan is retracing this journey from 1909 that this like architect or explorer went out to find these like hidden caves that are supposed to be like haunted and have these supernatural elements to it. I didn't even get to that part. Like, I got to the part where they started making their way there, and it just was like so much boring stuff, I think. I don't know. Maybe it just like I needed to like last a little bit longer. But it just didn't grasp me. Now, again, this is just my opinion. Not saying it was a bad book, but if you enjoyed this and maybe I need to give it another try before I unhaul this, let me know. Maybe I'll try one more time. But honestly, I just don't think this book was for me, which actually was one of the books that I chose for my Not Your Best Choice prompt for Ketchup-a-thon. Now, the last book that I DNF'd was a book that I DNF'd once before. And I was willing to give it a second try, but I don't know, something about it just didn't work for me. And that was Circi by Madeline Miller. And I know so many people have raved about this book. And also the other book that she wrote, what is it, Song of Achilles? I do still want to try Song of Achilles because I heard that is really good as well. But then again, I also heard this was really good. It just wasn't for me. I don't know if it was the writing style. I don't think it was like the story based on the myth itself. I think it was the writing style. I don't know. It just seemed very dense to me and just a lot of stuff that I know probably had a lot to do with the actual story, but it wasn't enough to grasp me early on. And I did give it a second chance, but it just wasn't working for me. And I think this is just a unhaul and not my style. So sorry, Circi, you're going in the unhaul pile. So those are all the books that I read for the month of July. Let me know down in the comments below. Have you read any of these? Did you enjoy any of these? The 2 books that I DNF'd, did I make a mistake DNFing them? I don't know. Tell me your thoughts. I love to hear all your thoughts. If you haven't read any of these books, are you intrigued by them? I also love to know that as well. And if you just want to let me know that you were here, but, you know, maybe a little too shy to comment, then leave me a ketchup bottle in the comments. I think there's an emoji with a ketchup bottle. If not, leave me a tomato. I know that there's that emoji just because, you know, we're dealing with Ketchup-a-thon. Well, that's all I have for today. Bye.